Malik Willis, Dynasty buy or sell? We're bringing out Rotoballer's Pierre Camus. Nailed it. On this podcast right now. Oh, sorry, folks. I had some feedback going in my head because I have the YouTube channel up on my screen. That's my fault. We're back. We're focused. One other great episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. Today, I'm excited to bring in Rotoballer's Pierre Camus to talk a little bit about some players that he's higher on and lower on for Dynasty purposes and Dynasty rookie rankings. And we also bring in on that old man, Paul Blake, to talk a little bit about Razzball's latest update, because now the latest updates to the Dynasty consensus rankings are live on the website at razzball.com. Make sure you're checking us out at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing. Hey, those intros happen sometimes, guys. Don't unsubscribe just because you saw that. It's going to be fine. We're going to have great shows all summer. Make sure you go into razzball.com to check out the latest content on baseball, basketball, and also football as well. And finally, make sure you go into IG and also TikTok to follow Razzball Fantasy. We have daily content going on there pretty much every day, folks. I am going to bring in my first person today, and I am super excited to announce that he's officially, the man is on Twitter. His name is Paul Blake. What's going on, Paul? Paul, I think you're on mute. Are you on mute?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just saying.
Yeah, look at us today. I mean, Pierre's never coming back at this point. What a rough start.
Hitting the ground running, man.
Headphones. All right, I'm sure whatever you said was awesome. We're super excited. We got you live mic now. Let's bring in the professional in the room. Our guest for today, Pierre Camus. Pierre, I can tell you right now, unless you're muted or something goes on in your headset, I feel like anything you say is going to be better than how we started the show. But you can find Pierre Camus at Roto_Chef on Twitter, and also all his great content at Rotoballer_NFL. What's going on, Pierre?
Hey, is this thing on? Okay. Now I gotta mess with you. I'm just messing. I hope I'm messing with you. You can hear me, right? Okay.
That is true. You're good. You're good.
Thanks for having me. You totally nailed it, by the way. You got it right, and you did check, so that's good. Yeah, man. Like you said, at Roto_Chef. Glad to be here with Razzball. You know, Rotoballer, Razzball have a long history of working together. You know, got to promote each other and what we do. All right, we're in it for the love of the game, love of the sport, love of fantasy, and that's it, man. It's 24/7 almost. I mean, always following it, and so I'm glad to be on here and get to talk some football, especially some Dynasty, right? Dynasty doesn't get enough love, I think, in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, too, is we're really excited because you are participating in our consensus Dynasty rookie rankings. We have 8 sites on there, including Razzball's own Paul Blake's rankings. They're fresh on the site as of today. So we have a couple updates, which we're excited to talk about. We're going to talk about some Dynasty buys and sells based on the rankings. So I basically combed through the consensus, looked at Pierre and Paul's rankings to see where they're higher on players, lower on. And then I found one player they're both either higher or lower that they're going to debate at the end of the show. So, Pierre, let's start with you. Let's talk about your player that you're high on. Actually, it's Chris Olave. You have him all the way at number 2, which is 5 spots higher than consensus. Tell us the thought process of why Chris Olave is at number 2.
Well, here's the one thing that's really hard to do is you kind of have to not overreact to draft capital. And when I say capital, of course, you know, all these top receivers talking about first round picks, but also landing spot. A lot of times a place looks like a terrible landing spot or look like, oh, there's too much competition, you know, or vice versa. And we'll get to that, I think, a little later with one of the other players. Things change, right? It's NFL. Things change every year. And so you have to think long term. And so redraft, I might have these guys, you know, very differently. In fact, some of them I do. But Olave, I would just say, first of all, I think it is a pretty good landing spot. Part of the reason I'm so high on him, and I say part, just a small part, is the Michael Thomas thing. And by that, I mean, I am totally out on Michael Thomas. I'm not drafting him. I'm keeping zero faith in him. And I really think Olave has a chance to come in there and be the number 1 receiver on that team this year. Now, it might not be right away, but still, I'm just saying, I think that he's going to get used in year one. And of course, in Dynasty, that boosts his value, right? Because we want guys to perform right away. If they don't perform in year one, now it's like, they're busts, right? There's no patience. Things have changed. So there's partly that, but also, look, this is a guy, if you know, a lot of us familiar with Matt Harmon, the reception perception that he does, great work there. He does a lot of heavy lifting for us. Chris Olave, out of all the prospects for wide receiver coming into this year, was first in success rate against both man and press coverage. And that tells you that he can succeed at the next level, right? And we're not just talking about competition and how he performed. You know, a lot of these guys came from Power 5 schools, but he knows how to beat man coverage. And so he's not going to get shut down or taken out of a game. And a lot of people are worried about that with guys like Treylon Burks, right? Maybe he doesn't have the speed. You know, maybe some guys don't have that route running precision. I think Olave kind of has it all. And so really, I think he's the best prospect. And I actually have a lot of confidence in his ability to perform right away because of where he wound up.
I mean, when I tell you when it rains, it pours, folks. It does. Honestly, I think that's the third thing that went wrong. So I think we're good now. So anyway, let's talk about Paul Blake. I looked at your rankings recently, and a player that we have talked about a little bit briefly was Tyler Batty. You actually have him 18 spots higher than consensus at 22 versus 40. So what is your thought process? Why is he in the background of the second round for you?
Yeah, love Tyler Batty, or Batty, obviously. You know, to me, he was the best running back in the SEC last year, and he's got the statistics to back it up. I think he had over 300 yards receiving, over 1,600 yards rushing. He's going to go to this Ravens team that, quite frankly, is returning some people from injury that have a lot of question marks. Don't know about J.K. Dobbins. Don't know how that knee's going to hold up. I don't know if they're going to just right out of the gate give him a whole bunch of carries, if they're going to string him along kind of slowly. The Gus Bus, who knows what happens with that coming off the injury. So early on, you're looking at Batty to try and kind of take over that third running back spot, and I think he'll do that. You know, you've got to beat up Mike. He's got to beat up Mike Davis. Got to beat out Justice Hill. Justice Hill just has never found the footing in the NFL like I hoped he would. Mike Davis does have some years behind him that he was good, and he was good, back catching the ball out of the backfield as well. But you know, I think his best years are behind him. So I think that puts Batty there at running back 3 on the Ravens with a fairly open shot. And if you're kind of following up on what he's been doing so far in OTAs, he's already turning heads. What do I got here? Jeff Zurbik from The Athletic is already reporting that he's standing out in OTAs. When you watch his film, the guy has really, really quick acceleration. He finds the hole and he gets through it and he gets going fast. He put up those numbers in the SEC on Missouri, which Missouri, not exactly a doormat, but they're certainly not the best of the SEC. So to see him on a somewhat struggling offense, a team that's a little bit outmatched, and to put up that type of rushing totals, keep in mind, they're probably swamped in some of these games where they're chasing points too. You know, I really like what I see from him, and other people are jumping on board. I read just today, CBS Sports had him, they bumped him up into their top 20 as well for a first-year rookie draft. So I might have been a little bit ahead of the curve, but it seems like everyone's catching up. And Batty, despite his size, I think he could be a 3-down guy. Okay,
so let's transition to some of our sells on the list. And it's actually another running back, and we're jumping over to you, Pierre. It's actually Pierce from the Texans. And now consensus has him at 16. You have him all the way down at 31. So why are you fading Pierce right now from the Texans?
Well, kind of what I mentioned, I was hinting at before is, you know, we just can't wait to see certain players, especially running back, right? Where running back was like opportunity matters. And it's true, but we can't wait to see a running back fall to like the Buffalo Bills. And now everyone's all over James Cook now, right? And everyone wanted to put a guy like Breece Hall or somebody, a high-end running back in the Texans because they need a running back, right? It's like whoever goes there is going to get the golden opportunity to be maybe even a workhorse back. And now it's kind of like by default because he's there and he's the one they did pick, even though it wasn't, you know, a high selection. They're thinking, well, he could become one of these, you know, bell cows for fantasy. I kind of try what I'm really trying to do these days, especially this year. I made an effort, look, before the NFL draft, is really kind of not shift my rankings, my values too much afterwards based on where they wound up. And Pierce wasn't a guy I don't even know if I had him in my top 10 running backs. And the thing I'll tell you, the good things that he does, right? There's good things. He's a really kind of a natural pass catcher. You know, he can do that out of the backfield. And once he gets in the open field, yeah, he can take it to the house. but I don't like that he kind of doesn't have what I think is probably the most underrated, because it's so hard to quantify. Like, we can't really measure is vision, right? Running back vision. That's what all these guys are fast. All these guys are strong, but how can you immediately see the hole and take it? And that's what I don't like. There's too many times I saw where he would kind of stutter and stop and wait. And he just didn't run as decisively. And that's why I love Kenneth Walker so much, even though Seattle's not maybe the best spot for him. I think he's a guy who can make it happen wherever. And Pierce, he's not a guy I loved pre-draft. And I think being on the Texans, look, he'll get maybe more touches than a lot of the rookies. But you have to also remember he's on now one of the worst teams in the NFL. So I think that's just going to tank his value even more as a running back. So I'm probably not going to have any Pierce, definitely in Dynasty, but even in the best ball or, as a flyer, I'm probably just going to pass.
Yeah, and he's going to be probably sharing with Marlon Mack early on in his career, too. So that's a name to monitor as well, which jumped down to another one, Paul Blake. This one's going to be controversial. I think a lot of people are excited about this guy, Skye Moore, who right now currently is going 8th overall. You have him all the way down at 6th. You hate Patrick Mahomes? You hate Andy Reid? What's going on with this ranking?
No, I actually love both those guys. And I do like Skye Moore. 16 isn't terribly low. It's, probably the back end of the first round, maybe early second round for your dynasty rookie drafts. And, I just don't necessarily like all the people who are in front of him right now, how he's got to climb through all that. So, he's got to battle with the hyphens. He's got to battle with Valdez Scantling. Got a battle with Juju Smith-Schuster. Smith-Schuster, like him, is really good after the catch. I love Skye Moore after the catch. I think he led all of college football in broken tackles after the catch last year. He's a stout, thick, fast guy. I don't think he can take the top off the defense quite like that 40 time might indicate, because I just didn't see that speed when I looked at the highlight reel. But, I think that the Chiefs have some guys in front of them. Granted, they're all kind of on arguable one-year deals. I know Valdez Scantling is technically a 3-year deal, but I think they can get out of that after the first year. So, I see him having troubles breaking through the first year. And then year 2 could just be a complete page 1 rewrite for that Kansas City wide receiver room. And I don't know where that leaves Skye Moore. Also they've got Josh Gordon there, and Josh Gordon he's the guy who just can't quit. The physical ability and the size and speed. I know he hasn't done it in a long time, but that's a guy that I've been dreaming on. And, I think Andy Reid could get him going. To me, it's such a big question mark. I do like him stepping forward in year 2, but I don't think he's going to step into that wide receiver 1. And that's without even talking about, the 6'5", 250-pound elephant in the room of Travis Kelce. He's going to eat up all the targets. He's going to be the main target guy. Skye Moore, I see him on his highlights. He's typically catching short passes and breaking tackles, using that after the catch ability and really showing that off. Or he's catching deep passes, which is kind of what Tyreek Hill did there. So I don't think he can step into that. But if I see him stepping forward, it's kind of in a secondary, ancillary role for me. A wide receiver 2 in a rookie draft. I think they kind of belong at the back end of the first round.
All right, that's fair. So listen, I got you both warmed up, talking a little about buys and sells, a little negativity, a little positivity. Now let's talk about a player that you guys differentiate on based on the current ADP, right? Our consensus rank has this player, Malik Willis, at 24th overall. Pierre, reasonable man he is, has him at 20th, a little higher, a little excited to see what he do. Paul Blake, on the other hand, has lost his damn mind and has this guy all the way down at 38. Now, since Pierre's the only this podcast, I'm going to go with you first. Talk to me about Malik Willis. Why are you a little bit higher than consensus on this player?
Well, again, maybe I'm just a stubborn man, but I don't want to shift too much just because Malik Willis fell, right? We all expected him to be possibly the first quarterback taken, maybe not a guaranteed first rounder. I mean, a lot of people thought that would happen, but not for sure. But nobody expected him to fall as far as he did, right? I think the talent is still there. The teams are just scared to have a guy that they know is going to be a project because they just didn't have the opportunity. The teams that are quarterback needy, right? They wanted a guy they can either plug in now or they're just going to wait. And a lot of teams, rightfully so, are waiting until next year to draft a quarterback, right? Or they're going to see what they can do in free agency or just plug Marcus Mariota in there or whatever they're going to do. So I think Malik Willis has the same talent we've seen. We know he has the arm talent. We know he has that running ability. And obviously in fantasy, it's not a secret anymore. It's a cheat code. These running quarterbacks, right? They're not going to necessarily be the most dynamic passers right away. But look, if we're excited about Trey Lance heading into this year, why can't we be almost as excited about Malik Willis and his potential next year? Because they didn't draft him just to sit and hold a clipboard forever, right? Obviously, Ryan Tannehill is make or break this year, right? If he happens to lead them to the Super Bowl, maybe Malik Willis never, gets on the field. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think the talent is still there. I think you have to be patient because here's the thing. There were no quarterbacks that we really need to be chasing in Dynasty this year. To me, Malik Willis is still the QB1 in this class, ahead of Kenny Pickett, right? Ahead of Corral or whoever, So a lot of it maybe has to do with the competition level, but I don't want to bump him down too much just because, teams weren't willing to take that chance. I think the talent is still there, and he seems like a sharp guy. He's a guy I think can develop into a starting quarterback, and it might just take 1 year.
All right, listen, Pierre, that was a good little argument. I got to tell you, though, Paul, I'm starting to lean already. I'm a little biased already, but try to change my mind. What's the deal with your ranking of Malik Willis?
Well, so kind of like Skye Moore, I do like Malik Willis. He does some good things. I just don't like him where he's being drafted right now. As Pierre said, he has a rocket arm. I mean, that is a howitzer. He can make any throw. I see a lot of him drilling the ball in there, and he can certainly throw the fastball. I saw a couple of plays on his highlight reel there was one, it was a 10-yard slant in, just the smallest, tightest of windows, and he got that thing through there. But I also see some deep passes that don't really have the right kind of loft to him. He doesn't seem to let guys run under him. Really, I kind of see a lack of accuracy. Didn't surpass a 65 completion percentage in college. Also, you hear, when you're talking about Malik Willis, you start hearing about, there's this kid at Liberty, and he is just a next level talent, super athlete. This guy's going to blow the roof off everything. To me, if you're that level of athlete and you've got that type of talent and you're playing at Liberty against lesser competition, your stats need to look a lot more like Lamar Jackson and a lot less like Tommy Armstrong Jr. And that's what they look like. He does run the ball well, but he never surpassed 3,000 yards passing. You got to get over that mark. And was really good in 2020. I like the 9-1 record, but then fell back in 2021. I don't know if that's teams adjusting to him, but I can tell you if teams at that level, at Liberty's level, can adjust to him, NFL teams can adjust to him. Another thing that I didn't like about his film when I watched him, a lot of drifting, just drifting back and rolling back and rolling back. And he gets out of it at that lower level, but in the NFL, if you've got an NFL type defensive end or an NFL type outside linebacker, or maybe even, a nickelback blitzing, he's not just going to be able to roll out and dodge that tackle and make the throw 50 yards down the field. That's probably not going to be in there. To me, the scrambling quarterbacks who are successful are the ones who climb the pocket. And I'm not saying he's never climbed the pocket. I did see some plays where he did, but the quarterbacks who climb that pocket, their sacks are probably closer to the negative 2, 3, 4 yard range. Those guys are the ones that are good, or the ones that frustrate defenses by those 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3 scrambles where he picks up 4, 5, 6 yards, gets out of bounds. And even though the defense had that play called perfectly, now everybody on the defense is frustrated. Defensive coordinator's frustrated because his quarterback beat him, even though they had the right defensive play called. I just didn't see enough of that from Malik Willis. I'm not saying it's not in there. I do think it's in there. I just think it's going to take a long time to get it out of him. He's just got to work on these kind of finer points, these nuanced options. And I don't know that the Titans are going to give him that amount of time. If you're a 3rd round quarterback, you kind of got to get in there and prove yourself a little bit like a Davis Mills did last year to get another shot. Because if things go wrong and Tennessee's terrible and they blow this thing up, you could be looking at a new head coach with a new quarterback in mind who he's going to take early on in the 1st round. That's kind of how these rebuilds go. That's kind of how these blow up goes. The new coach may not be a fan of the quarterback the last guy took in the 3rd round. He may want his own guy. So to me, this is a high upside project quarterback. And in your 1st year player draft for fantasy, I draft that type of player in the 3rd round, which around 38, I think that's kind of, the area you should be taking him. Hell, that's where I took Davis Mills last year, and it's looking okay now. But I'm not like, Davis Mills is my next starting quarterback. He's just a nice piece that maybe I can trade for a running back or wide receiver down the stretch.
Pierre, any rebuttals to anything that Paul said that you would like to bring up?
Look, all that makes sense. I hate to almost agree too much because I really love what he said about the first two players. I'm a Batty fan. Skye Moore, I think, is being overdrafted a little bit. And I can't argue against myself, but I will say it's true. Willis is a guy who is going to need some work, right? He did tend to kind of dance around the line of scrimmage a lot and try to make things happen, right? You don't have 5 seconds to run back and forth laterally in the NFL, but he's going to take some time. But again, I can't help but compare it to a guy like Trey Lance, who barely really saw the field last year. Again, playing against non-Power 5, not even, FCS competition really, and going against, now NFL defenses. It's going to take time, but the upside is there because realistically for fantasy, we don't need him to have, 65% completion rate. We just need him to run for 50, 60 yards, maybe run in a touchdown every other game, throw for a couple hundred yards and a touchdown or two. That could happen. Now, I would have liked a better landing spot, right? Tennessee, not a pass-heavy offense, but maybe that actually plays to his strengths because he won't be asked to throw it 30-plus times a game. So I get everything you said makes total sense. There's obviously holes in Willis's game that need to be fixed. I don't know if Tennessee's a team that's going to happen. I'm not worried about the coaching situation. I think Vrabel bought himself some time. I think he'll be fine. I think it's a pretty stable situation there, at least for the next year or two. Is Ryan Tannehill the right mentor for him? That I'm not even going to speak on. Who knows? We'll see. I'm, partially biased. I'm not like the hugest Tannehill fan in history, but I will just say that there's upside, and I'd rather chase upside for a guy like Willis than take a guy like Pickett, who's just probably going to be a game manager for maybe a year or two, and that's about it.
All right. Well, that'll do it. And listen, I'm going to give the people an opportunity. Leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Who you leaning with? You with Paul Blake? You with Pierre? We'll let the people decide. But just on principle, I'm leaning Pierre because I said in my show notes a minute or two, Paul, and you just go off for 4 minutes. So Pierre wins in my book. But that will do it. That's an episode of the Razzball Football Podcast. Before we close out, Pierre, I want to give you just a second to tell the people where they can find your content, where they should follow you, any upcoming projects or articles coming out soon.
Always. I'll just say rotoballer.com, of course. I'm there, baseball and football, trying to put up as much as I can, every 2-3 articles per week, and behind the scenes editing and doing all the stuff to kind of, steer the ship there. And we have so many good writers. I just love getting to work with all them, so everything on rotoballer.com. I also have a podcast on YouTube called Fantasy Endgame. So y'all can check that out too. And if you can find me on Twitter, it's right there. It's Roto_Chef. And that is a nickname I was blessed with by Scott the King Engel. So if the King gives you a nickname, it has to stick. So I've stuck with it.
That's perfect. All right. Well, thanks for joining again. We do really appreciate it. Paul, always a pleasure, sir. I really do appreciate your insight. Once again, this is the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. Make sure you to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel and check us out on IG and TikTok. And always go to razzball.com to check out the latest. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco, for Pierre and Paul Blake. We're out of here.